Good evening, everyone. It's now the hour 6 o'clock, so I will call this meeting of Lunenburg Town Council to order. It is a regular meeting, and we begin every meeting with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting takes place on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and reiterate that we are all treaty people. And also, in opening the meeting, acknowledge that Mayor Myra is away. He sent his regrets and asked that I fill in as deputy to chair this evening's meeting. So moving on in our agenda, there is an item additions, deletions to agenda. And are there any to note? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. So looking for a motion to approve our agenda for this evening, June 23rd. So motion, Councillor Strong moves that. Councillor Fullerton seconds. Thank you. All in favor? Any contrary-minded? No, no one left to counter. So the motion is carried. Next item of the agenda is an approval for the minutes of our special meeting, which was held on May 13th. Is there someone who's willing to make a motion? Councillor Babineau moves the approval of those minutes. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greek. Any discussion, errors, or omissions? All in favor? Anyone counter-minded? No, motion is carried. We also had our regular meeting on May 26th, so we need to have a motion to approve those minutes as well. Councillor Strong moves the approval of the May 26th regular meeting of council. Is there a seconder? Councillor Fullerton. All in favor? Motion is carried. So down to the business of the new business of the meeting, and we have a presentation this evening by Lunenburg County Accessibility Regional Advisory Committee. So welcome. You have to just press the button and
okay,
welcome.
Now it's on. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
I'm going to try to navigate all the different technologies, so my apologies. I'm just going to start by introducing myself. My name is Laura Church, and I'm here as the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. I'm joined here by Ellen, our accessibility staff, and Louise Hopper, our vice chair. So if you have any questions that I may not be able to answer, one of the other ladies may jump in. But what brings me to this work is I'm the executive director for the Nova Scotia Community Living Organizations. It's an umbrella or membership organization of service providers. So we have 57 members across the province who support people with intellectual, developmental disabilities or mental health support needs. And as part of that work, that's what brings me here. I also happen to be a board member for the Disability Rights Coalition, and they're the watchdog for the Human Rights Remedy. So it's a little bit of what kind of brings me to the work at the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So I'm going to move my slide. So the Accessibility Advisory Committee was established in 2019 as a response to the Accessibility Act, as you probably all know. It comes with a regional approach. The committee itself is made up of 50% persons with disabilities or representatives like myself from organizations that support people with disabilities. It is regional, meaning that it contains all of the municipalities and districts here. So the districts of Lunenburg and Chester, the towns of Lunenburg, Bridgewater, and Mahone Bay, and the village of Chester. And the other half is made up of elected officials. One of your counselors is on our committee here. So our role is that of providing you as a council and your staff when appropriate. We provide advice on the required accessibility plan. and updates, including their preparation, implementation, and effectiveness. Our role is also to provide advice to councils on opportunities to promote full participation for persons with disabilities as a result of the accessibility and existing and proposed municipal services and facilities. So a bit of why we're here today is just to remind you that we're here. We're here to be a support to councils related to projects, and also a reminder that accessibility looks so different for everybody. And so while we may come with a lens of we think we're making something accessible, part of the committee is that we represent people with all kinds of different accessibility experiences and needs. And so that's part of what our experience can bring to that table. Sorry, there we go. So we also make recommendations about strategies designed to achieve the objectives of the municipalities or commission's accessibility plans. We receive information from you and make recommendations when requested. So that's one of those big key components, is that we can't make recommendations or come to you unless you come to us first and seek our guidance. We also monitor provincial and federal government directives and regulations. We host public consultations throughout the municipality related to accessibility. We provide input and advice to update accessibility plans every 3 years, and we provide an annual budget for the committee to carry out our mandate. We can support you as counselors to ensure accessibility is considered not only in work specifically focused on accessibility, but also with respect to other work. So we know when you're doing projects related to accessibility, you often come to us, but really accessibility is a lens we can look at with any work that municipalities are encountering. So we have a few successes, things that the committee has championed. So first, the image on there shows our most recent accessibility plan. We have a plain text version and also a more visual version. We have also participated in building relationships through our participation as members who have networks of people who care about accessibility through our efforts to connect in community. As an example of that is we did a first panel discussion that took place at the Modal Council Chambers on June 2nd for Accessibility Awareness Week or Access Week. If you didn't have a chance to attend that event, you can see the recording until the end of the month on the Modal YouTube page. And for those who may not understand, First Voice is the terminology we use for people with lived experience with disability. These relationships with persons with disabilities and allies can help support engagement of people who may not have traditionally been engaged with municipal government. These voices can support making better accessibility decisions. We as committee members can be champions in community for projects that incorporate accessibility. And in addition, counselors serving on the committee are provided with more information about accessibility issues in community and can bring that knowledge back to you at the council table. A few more success examples. So we have a picture up there, it's loading here, of Sawpit Wharf. Actually, this is Wild Rose Park in municipality of Chester. It has some really beautiful accessible washrooms, including adult change tables or a change table. One of the committee members visited this to give some additional advice related to accessibility as that project was ongoing. We've also given advice for Sawpit Wharf and Modal and Civic Square in the town of Lunenburg. We have had a lot to say about initial designs of these projects, and we believe that feedback was both supportive of more accessible designs and well received by the planners. A few of our challenges. So we're going to highlight 3 foundational ones that make accessibility work challenging in general everywhere. Those are knowledge gaps, actual and perceived costs of accessibility projects, and representation. So first, there are just general gaps around knowledge and accessibility. People don't always know when we need to think about it and what to do with problems when we find them. And again, it's a reminder that that's what the experience of the committee can bring. Second, there's often a concern about the actual or perceived cost of making things accessible. We know that there can be increased costs compared with designs that do not consider accessibility. And we also know that this is not always the case, and that intentional planning that considers accessibility often does not result in increased costs. And we know that we don't include accessibility in our designs. We knowingly exclude members of our community. It's also a reminder that accessibility benefits everybody. Disability is one of the only marginalized groups that any one of us can become a part part of at any time. But some great examples of accessibility are, cuts and curbs. They were designed for accessibility, but they certainly benefit each and every one of us if we're pulling luggage behind us or pushing a cart, or if you're a parent pushing a stroller. So accessibility benefits a lot more than just people with physical disability related needs. And finally, a key challenge with accessibility work is that the people who most understand the barriers, those with disabilities and lived experience, are often not represented amongst decision makers. So unless we are intentionally pulling these folks into the conversation and seeking their input and advice, we don't have all the information we need to make good decisions that will work for them. A friend of mine, Paul Tingley, who works with the Accessibility Directorate, was telling a story about how we can tick boxes with accessibility, and he was visiting a McDonald's somewhere else in the province, not in this beautiful municipality. It had the required accessible parking, and it had a required accessible entrance, and they were on opposite sides of the parking lot, which in February made it inaccessible for him because he couldn't get through the parking lot from the accessible space to the accessible entrance. So it's one of those ways we have to think about, how does accessibility actually function when it's designed? Bringing it down to our work, some challenges we have identified include knowing, just councils knowing that we're here and remembering that we are here to ask advice of. We don't hear from councils as often as we would like, and we would very much like to provide our advice to you. This sometimes means we don't always have a great understanding of what you as councils and municipalities hope to get from our committee. We have a lot of collective knowledge and experience, and we want to know what expectations you have for us as well. And communication, how would you like to hear from us? Every one of the councils wants things a little bit differently. So really understanding, do you want unsolicited advice if you're working on a project and we have it, or do you want us to wait till you come to us? We volunteer our time and expertise and hope we can support you to make communities more accessible. These foundational and more process-oriented challenges make it difficult, but not impossible to make change happen. We want to work with you to decrease the impact of any challenges for accessibility work. Some of the key messages of what we bring. So I think a lot of us have seen the stat, like almost 38% of Nova Scotians have a disability, which is the highest percentage of any of the provinces here in Canada. But they're not proportionally represented amongst decision makers, really at any kind of decision-making table. So our committee is one of those ways we can bring that perspective back to decision makers. We can use several lenses when considering advice. We use the lens of how the results of a decision will impact the experience of people with varying disabilities. We use an intersectional lens to consider how other identities, such as race, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, and other identities a person might identify with, could intersect and impact their experience with accessibility in a community. And most importantly, we use a human rights-based lens. So that means that we recognize that accessibility for people with disabilities is a fundamental human right. And we consider whether the outcomes of the decisions we make and the recommendations we make, how they impact that. So next steps, again, just a reminder, we're here. Please ask for our advice and tell us your thoughts. We would love to hear more from council about projects and ways that the committee can support that work. And generally, just if you have any questions for us.
Thanks very much for the presentation. Most welcome and appreciated. Are there any questions of Ms. Church or Ellen, who's also here? Go ahead, Gail. Gail happens to be our representative.
So not really a question, more of a comment, just to thank you very much for the presentation, and good to see you. I missed last week's meeting, unfortunately, but we've sort of jumped outside our comfort zone with online meetings, and for the summer months, we have made a schedule of meeting monthly at the various municipal offices of the municipalities that the committee serves, and it's been very interesting, and it's good to see where the other groups work and make these decisions the same as we do here in the town of Lunenburg. So thank you very much.
It's been certainly beneficial for me. I'm a resident of Bars Corner, so of the municipality of the district of Lunenburg. So certainly I'm less familiar with some of the other places. So it's been a really lovely experience for me to get to come and see all of the different districts and municipalities for sure.
I don't, if, yeah, I was just going to suggest that I know that that we've had some discussions in speaking with staff recently about this particular room, which has some challenges and something that we as a council have looked to make improvements upon. So I don't know, perhaps our CAO may speak to that, but yeah, and just, yeah, I'll let you go ahead and add something after if necessary. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Church, for participating tonight. And we've worked with Ellen. Specifically, one of the things we really wanted to highlight was several projects we've done in our public works and our outside spaces. But this council chambers, actually, Ellen went through a whole process with staff to look at this, and something we're going to look at adjusting in the summer to make those accessibility options. It's probably going to be phased in over time, but there are quick wins that we can do here moving into the fall as we scale back for the summer, but we want to ensure that moving into the fall, we have better accessibility for this room and the space for all to participate. So thank you.
That's so fantastic. And I have to say, part of this is my worlds colliding where, looking at having communities who are really engaged and interested in building more inclusive spaces right at the time of one of the largest human rights transformations for people with disabilities in this province and the work of the Human Rights Remedy. The reality is hundreds of Nova Scotians are being repatriated and moved back into their communities of choice. And we love to be able to highlight in our district and our full, municipality, all the beautiful accessibility work, hoping to make it really a welcoming place for Nova Scotians leaving institutional settings to move back home to.
It's a huge movement, and I know our MLA is the committee minister. Yes. So yes, at all of those intersections. But so no, it's wonderful. We're very, I think, privileged and it benefits us greatly to have the expertise that your committee brings, and grateful for Councillor Fullerton for sitting on that committee on our behalf, and as a resource for staff. Some often things like the conversations that go on between staff, we're not privy to the details, but look forward to the results. And you mentioned you whether or not to reach out for whether or not unsolicited advice was welcome. And I would suggest, simply from my perspective, that that it probably is, and I'm just not sure what the channels for that would be. But sometimes, as you mentioned, we're not the first voices. Is that the term you
first voice, self-advocates, people with lived experience?
So may completely miss things that would be obvious to people who have that lived experience. So if you do notice that, I do hope it would be brought to our attention somehow, so changes could be made. And just also highlight our recreation. I think the doors are going in today to make that more accessible. So we are working away, and we are grateful for your help.
Thanks. That's amazing.
Anything else from any other members of council? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
So the next item on our agenda is our opportunity for public input and questions, which is a standing agenda item. And we invite people who have commentary to provide for us this forum to speak before council and to make a public presentation. And we do have one person signed up. And so I'd invite Townsend Anderson to come to the podium.
Hit the red button, or hit the button. There you
go. Hi. I will try to keep this to 3 minutes. If I go a little bit over, will you indulge me? I put this together not thinking that I would present tonight, because of the recent events, but the opportunity presented itself. So it'll be 1 year tomorrow since the local historic significance of the CNR Lunenburg station was brought to your attention at a public hearing. I want to emphatically state before I go any further that I have no issue with the second-story women's center, even if they had requested that the station not be registered, and I don't know that. In fact, I think it is an excellent adaptive use of a historic train station. My issue is with this council. So I stand before you this evening as a career-long preservation professional with applicable experience in preservation law. And it is through this lens that I will summarize a few of the many facts as they unfolded over my months-long effort to persuade this council to do the right thing. And failing that, at the very least, to respect the town policy for adding heritage properties to the municipal registry. And I'm only reading excerpts of a longer letter to council, which I will deliver hopefully sometime tomorrow. So, fact, the Heritage Office, the Lunenburg station has been identified and evaluated to be of local historic significance, making it eligible for individual inclusion in the municipal registry of heritage properties. The fact, the heritage officer at the time of the 2023 Heritage Conservation District Plan was being drafted, had all the documentation needed to recommend to the previous town council that the station be included in the municipal registry, with or without consultation with the Heritage Advisory Committee. Fact, the Heritage Advisory Committee's role in determining the historic significance of individual properties is embedded in the town's Heritage Property Act number 43 and the Provincial Heritage Property Act. Fact, the use of the word may in both the Town of Lunenburg Heritage Property Act and the Provincial Heritage Property Act refers to the powers of the Heritage Advisory Committee, not the discretion of the council. Preservation law is quite clear on what body has the authority to determine the eligibility of heritage properties. With respect to the municipal registry, that authority is vested in the Heritage Advisory Committee. The council had no authority to pull my application before the Heritage Officer had a chance to review it for completeness and forward it to the Heritage Advisory Committee for its review and evaluation, any more than a private property owner could pull an application by a third party. There is no timeline for the submittal of a third-party application, either before, during, or after the sale of a property. And I reiterate, Town Council does not have the authority to determine the eligibility of properties to be included in the municipal registry. That authority is vested in the Heritage Advisory Council Committee. Council may refuse, and I use that word, that is directly from the Provincial Heritage Property Act. Council may refuse to register a property that has been determined to be historically significant and recommended by the Heritage Advisory Committee. In this instance, if they did recommend to the council would surely explain its reasons for refusal if it decided that it would refuse. So where do we go from here? I suggest that council first answer my question, which I have asked at least twice and remains unanswered. Council's discretion, which is the answer I was most recently given, is not a reason. It's an excuse. The question is, why is the CNR Lunenburg station not on the municipal registry of heritage properties? So, having been rebuffed again and again, oftentimes with inaccurate, misleading responses, Please advise whether, one, I need to resubmit my application for registering in municipal heritage property. Two, the application on file with the heritage officer can be forwarded to the Heritage Advisory Council. Or whether you would be amenable to sitting down with me to resolve this dilemma amicably and to the benefit of all interested parties. And I include the residents of this town as an interested party, given that what I've been describing tonight are all in policies adopted by this town. Thank you. And I will follow up with a written letter to you all.
Thanks for your presentation, and we look forward to seeing your correspondence.
Okay.
There was no one else signed up, but is there anyone else in the gallery that would like to speak? Okay, I don't see anyone raising their hands, so we'll move on. We do have one item of correspondence, which is listed as an in-kind request by Be the Peace Institute for Community Center Rental. And I think with our, later on in the meeting, we will be looking at community grants. It appears further on, and this request for in-kind is something that in our discussions with respect to community grants, we've determined that we need to identify the dollar value in order to provide a, if it's not in a special event policy, we need to provide or understand as a council what the dollar value equivalent of that in-kind contribution would be. So I would ask that staff take the letter request and make that determination so that we can either relook at it again under that the policy of community grants. I think there's given the date of the event, there should be time for us to do that in looking at the request according to our policy. So moving on then to new business. The next item is from item concerning our public works. So I think Mr. Joyce is here to speak to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening I have a report on an RFP award for the Trackless Sidewalk maintenance machine. The recommendation in the report is that Council award the new Trackless request for proposal to Saunders Equipment for the amount of $187,302 plus HST. So within Public Works fleet, currently we have the one Trackless machine. So during the winter period, that helps us with our salting and snow clearing from the sidewalks. And during other times of the year, it helps us with street sweeping. So trying to make our fleet more resilient to risks and issues, we've included a new Trackless machine in the capital budget this year. This would help us split the workload that the existing machine carries alone, and also gives us cover in case there were issues with the one machine. This second one would pick up that workload. So within the RFP for the Trackless machine, we included some attachments as well. So we included a rear mount sidewalk spreader, which is the salt spreader, an angled snow plow, and a rear mounted water tank, which helps us in the street sweeping context. So in terms of the RFP, it closed on May 25th, 2026 and is valid for 90 days. Anything over the value of $100,000 comes to council for approval. So at the top of the second page, council can see, we received 2 proposals, very, very close in value. And the amount that was included in the capital budget for the machine was $225,000. So both proposals fell within that budgeted amount. Staff reviewed the 2 proposals, both strong. The one that Saunders provided was the same machine that we already, or an updated model, but very similar to the one that we already have. Same make, model, and has a really good warranty program that's outlined in the report. Based on the relative pricing and considering the value add for consistencies and attachments, staff recommend awarding the RFP to Saunders Equipment based on our review. That concludes the report, but if there are questions, I can address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Fullerton.
Through the chair, Tyson, how old is the machine that we have? Do you know?
I'll admit I don't know exactly how old the one we have. It was certainly around before I came 4 years ago, but as for when we got it, I would be guessing if I told you the year.
Okay. I don't know how long those machines are expected to last. That was the reason I was asking.
So through the chair, I think it really depends on the maintenance that it gets and the attention. I believe that ours is very well maintained. The person that operates that machine currently is the significant majority of the operations and takes really good care of it. And I think that would that kind of ownership is what we'd look to instill in the crew, even as it would be necessary to increase the number of operators we have. So it would be hard for me to put an exact number on it. But you can see the warranty details in the report for the different aspects. But we're confident that we have many more years service in the machine that we have.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, for clarification, the Trackless is a 2017.
Thanks for that added information. Any other questions of members of council? Yes, Councillor Babineau.
Not a question, just a comment. Happy to see something coming in under budget for once.
It's been a couple of times this year. No, sorry. Do we have someone who might be willing to make the motion or further question? Councillor Greg?
I can do 2 for 1, actually. Before I make the motion, Tyson, just out of curiosity, roughly how many hours do we put on the Trackless currently, annually?
Through the chair, it does depend on the kind of winter that we have. Last winter, when it was my recollection is it was much icier than it was this year, and sidewalks were quite treacherous. Honestly, Brian was spending full day, like he'd make his 4 or 5 hour route, and by the time he got back, he'd say, "I'm not quite happy with where it's at," and he'd load up and go straight back out. So I don't have a number for you because every year is different, and the dedication that employee shows is pretty exceptional, if I do say so myself. So, but key in terms of safety for pedestrians, it's one of our main tools. You know, we've just listened to the accessible presentation, and making our streets safe for pedestrians as safe as they can be in those kind of conditions is a big priority for our team and the town in general. So really important tool that we have here.
All right. With that said, I would move that council award the new trackless request for proposals RFP dishonors equipment for the amount of $187,302 plus HST.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Fullerton, thank you. Any further questions? All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is with respect to the Affordable Housing Grant Program, Housing Accelerator Fund Initiative. And I believe we have someone here to speak to that too. That would be Alan. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. Just awaiting my presentation. So, Deputy Mayor and Council, thank you for listening to me this evening. So this is a bit of a discussion meeting regarding the Affordable Housing Grant Program that we've had to under our Housing Accelerator Fund. I believe last time I was here, I committed to making smaller reports, but I'm going to make up for it by having a longer presentation. So I'll do my best. We go to next slide. So really what I want to do this evening is just talk about the program, what the intentions are. So we talk a little bit about half progress, the objective of the grant program, what we mean by affordability, eligibility, grant amounts and evaluation, risk mitigation, and ultimately some unknowns, some things we're not going to be able to know before we begin the program. Next slide, please. I did have our quarterly meeting with CMHC actually on Monday. They have expressed concern about the progress that we are making on the HAF initiatives. We are roughly a year and a half behind on some of them and close to a year behind on this one. Were quite direct about the fact that this may impact the final amount that we do receive. Despite assurances that we are making considerable progress since over the last several months regarding this. And there was actually a lot of work prior to me actually joining the town. So, however, they were very deliberate about saying that further delay with programs would probably result in a reduction. So they wanted me to make that very clear. So take that as you will. So the objective of this program is the Affordable Housing Grant Program is to support the affordability of newly created units. The focus, I want to be really specific here. It's not to necessarily incent new units per se, but it's to increase the affordability of the ones that we may have coming. If people choose to begin new units because of the grant program, that's great. But really the intent is to bring down the rental cost ultimately. And the focus is really on rental housing fundamentally. And also really to complete the initiative within the term of the Housing Accelerator Fund. Next slide. So this is a question that we often get into when we're discussing affordability. So often it's discussed in terms of being hard to define. I think what I've tried to draw out in the report is really it's context sensitive. So depending on where you are in terms of your household composition, size, income, what your dependents are, where your income's actually derived from, whether it's government subsidized or dependent to some degree, affordability is going to look very different depending on who you are and what part of your life you may be in. So the intent here was not really in this program to set affordability very specifically, but to essentially set a base level. So a ceiling as far as rents can go. So anything below that is great, but nothing above that. And the intent here is to be somewhat flexible, but also try to capture as much as we potentially can in terms of potential affordable units and to meet a bunch of variety of different options. One of the other concerns around the program too is really whether it's directed towards private and nonprofit entities. So the reality is that private sector investment is limited in terms of their concern to go below market. It's not really within their mandate. They will sometimes go into agreements where we purchase that level of affordability. Nonprofits, on the other hand, are typically trying to address failures in the housing spectrum to house particular individuals or particular incomes or backgrounds, et cetera. So they tend to be a little bit more focused on deriving affordability. Again, individuals are going to be much more at risk of housing instability and more concerned with affordability than two and sometimes three income households. So that's sort of where we are with that. I also wanted to sort of express when we look at the census from 2021, 36% of the households in Lunenburg are one-person households. So these are potentially individuals that may be a little bit more at risk in terms of housing precarity and looking at concerns around rental affordability as well. Two-person would be the next highest, and as we go up, with more dependents probably when we get to three-person and four-person households. So somewhat limited. So that one-person household is perhaps where we want to be directing some of our attention. Next slide. Sorry for the number salad here, but there's a lot of things in here. So this is trying to provide a little bit of an illustration around household type and what median income might be by household size. So based on the 2021 census, which was data collected from the 2020 tax returns, so a one-person, the median, so median, the middle income for a one-person household in the town of Lunenburg is $32,800. 30% of that median income is $9,840. What we would consider an affordable rent would be $820 a month. We just completed work through Turner Drake to look at average monthly rents in the town. So a bachelor apartment, which would suit a one-person household, is set at about $982. A one bed is $1,018. And the 80% is what we'd be trying to target as the base level of affordability for this program is $786, and a one bed would be $814. So in both cases, if we simply set it at our ceiling, so our base level of affordability, assuming, also, I want to caveat, going back to those incomes, those were again in 2020, things have changed since then. The next census will probably show us that those incomes have increased. However, given that the current rates of average weighted market rents and our old incomes can match at an 80% of average market rents, and that meets, probably means it's a good target. It's a good base level to start from. So two or more, again, a little bit more income. Again, incomes back in 2020 can still reasonably meet the current market rents. So if we look at the median. So the program would be trying to target individuals who are below the median. And that's specific in the program as well too. Next slide. So the applicant eligibility, so the people would be looking for the grant funds, there's sort of two fundamental price or income measures. The first one is you must commit to the price ceiling. So 80% of average market rent that's the base, that's to get you in the door. And you must house households with below median income, so below those levels that we were talking about previously. So the ones who were at medium should be able to meet those market rents. So we're looking to target people below there. Other criteria, so we're looking for people who have some experience with housing provision or willing to find that experience or purchase that experience, depending on the unit type and format of the development. Have completed a similar size project to one proposed for the grant, depending on what they propose. And if they're sort of a housing development entity, that they're in good standing with the Registry of Joint Stocks, or they're a unit resident of the town proposing an accessory unit in a on a parcel where they're the primary resident. So they would need to be their primary residency would have to be where the accessory unit is going. So next slide, please. Eligible projects. Okay. Again, one of the things I want to preface, and I tried to bring this out in the report, we actually have a particularly short runway on this. These CMHC is expecting us to have this program wrapped up by February 2027. That sounds very far away. It is not very far away at all. So the intention for projects is to try to keep it somewhat open. So they can be new, repurposed, or renewed housing stock. So looking for new dwelling units, and again, those can be accessory dwelling units. It could be a new unit in a multi-unit development. We're not going to make a large amount of distinction there. We'd be looking at potential retrofits for commercial, institutional, or institutional buildings. Again, prefacing everything that it has to meet the land use bylaw and it has to be consistent with the HCD. We wouldn't consider anything outside of that. We'd also be looking at renewal of existing residential stock. So if something has fallen into disrepair, we would potentially fund the rehabilitation of that to bring it back online. So maintaining that housing stock. And again, the intent is to remain broad as affordability rather than specific dwelling unit creation is the focus. We're also encouraging mixed market housing. So that would be more in a multi-unit format. Across the board, mixed market housing is always the most sustainable in terms of maintaining affordable rents. Cooperative housing, non-market housing has a much larger reliance on government transfers over time. Mixed market housing has the ability to adjust rents in market units to account for affordability in non-market units. Again, we're not sure what we're going to get at this stage. Next. So again, examples. Residents may choose to add an accessory dwelling unit. They may choose to retrofit an outbuilding into 2 dwelling units. We actually have one of those slated. It may be a multi-unit development, which includes some below market units. It may be a heritage structure in need of significant repair and it's converted back into residential stock, might have 2 units, et cetera. It could be any potential format. So we're intentionally trying to be potentially diverse. So the images there are examples of, I think that's the Lady of Guadalupe Church in Dartmouth. So there's a proposal for that site to add additional dwelling units to the site. HRM released a report, I think a few months ago, looking at trying to repurpose some of their old fire stations that are in need of rehabilitation. And so again, these are potential projects of structures that exist within the town that we may be able to repurpose for housing through this grant or support their rehabilitation. Next. So the report outlines sort of the grant amounts and some information around how we would seek to evaluate. So the bucket that we've set aside for this program is $250,000. What that leaves in the total amount for half fund to date is within the report and financial section. So again, because we're simply looking for a base level affordability, the entry point would be about $10,000 if you reach that eligibility, and then it would be on a sliding scale. If you increase the level of affordability, if you go to say 30%, 70%, 60%, 50% of average market rent, the grant would increase. We're also considering other criteria as well too. So if there's other components, if you go above and beyond the building code for energy efficiency, which ultimately impacts the tenant as well too, in terms of utility costs, we would consider that as well too as a contribution to affordability. We've capped projects at $100,000 a project and $25,000 per unit. And again, we're really trying to look for a high level of depth of affordability. So higher affordability, larger grant. The base level time for the affordability would be 10 years. If you go beyond that, say cooperative housing, then we would consider more money. If you were a nonprofit housing provider, similar sort of consideration. Yeah, next slide, please. So these are examples of other grant funds. So most of the HAF recipients in Nova Scotia had some component where they were expected to provide a grant for housing affordability. They range in terms of the amounts and what they're provided for. and it's sort of split between two levels. So it's either pre-construction, so providing money for developments for engineering, architectural work, planning, due diligence, etc., or it's post-construction, so after the project is actually completed. And those have sort of pros and cons. Kings County in particular is focused just on servicing. So it covers the cost of connection to existing municipal services and not for the actual construction of the building in particular. And sometimes they're per unit, sometimes they're per project. It really sort of depends. And there's pros and cons. If the grant is provided as a pre-construction grant, there's no guarantee that the project's completed. And so you may have issued a grant to a project that doesn't proceed. If you do it at the end, after it's received occupancy and complete, yes, you have a unit, but the level of affordability may have changed over that period of time based on the construction. So there's pros and cons. So next slide, please. Just some cost examples. So pulled some square footage costs from the Altus Cost Guide, which is sort of a base that people use for estimating construction costs. And they usually use major centers such as Halifax, Calgary, Montreal to get a sense of what the square footage cost for completion of a dwelling would be. And they range based on very low levels, say in Halifax for a single family dwelling with an unfinished basement, 150,000 to, sorry, 150,000, that'd be a very pricey home. 150 to $225 per square foot. That's the 2026 values in Halifax. So if we look at a housing unit within Lunenburg, so 70 Victoria Road, so it's a single family dwelling, unfinished basement, 2,100 square feet. This is why I didn't go to engineering school. So a new build is roughly about 315,000, 472,000 at the high end of that. The Affordable Housing Grant Program contribution to that cost is very small. It's very minimal. And so may not be an incentive for someone to actually go forward with a project. It might be the icing on the cake, but you're not really buying a significant amount of affordability in that case for that kind of structure. If we go to the next one, so this is an example of a retrofitted building, so an ADU conversion of a garage. So looking at this, when it was produced, the estimated cost for the work was $25,000 flat. I don't think that's how much it actually was, but that's fine. That's what they estimated it at for the building permit. If we look at the cost of construction based again on that 150 to 25, that comes in at 110,700, which is probably more accurate, I would say. Maybe a little bit less than that for the conversion. So, and that covers a much more substantial amount of the cost of construction. So you're buying much more affordability in those cases for those types of units. So again, there's pros and cons. So a little bit about risk mitigation, so why we made some of the choices. Again, if we distribute funds at the outset, there's a potential for project failure. Someone decides not to move forward, the project changes significantly, et cetera, and we don't really have a mechanism for recouping that cost necessarily. So we've chosen to disperse the funds upon occupancy permit. It makes sure that we have a unit. Ultimately, the HAF is really focused on creating units anyway. So we win and we either get a unit and counts toward the half, or we get a unit and it's affordable, one or the other, if we wait. Another potential risk is affordability erosion. So over time, someone may try to continue to increase the rent on the eligible and affordable units. So they may not provide affordability for the full term. Our contribution agreement, there's a draft of it in the report. The expectation is that most of the terms for individual projects will be in there. So term, affordability, actual amount, they'll be received, et cetera. And so we're trying to mitigate that by putting it in there. And we have clauses in it which allow us to go back to the applicant and recover an amortized amount based on how many years they actually provided said affordability. We also allow programs for mixed income developments. Again, The hope is, as said before, mitigates the impact to the affordable units by having the ability to raise units, rents, and market units. We may have an inexperienced applicant. So someone thinks this is very exciting, give me some money. Maybe they don't necessarily know what they're doing, and they cannot complete due to inexperience or their funds get tied up. So program requires demonstration of experience. Either you've done this before or you're using someone who knows how to do it. And in the case of accessory dwelling unit, if it's your primary residence, you have an incentive to actually see the project completed and to a reasonable standard. So, and that way we're sort of relying on people to be somewhat home proud. And so we tie that up a little bit. Maybe someone proposes something that's not permitted. At the application stage, people have to indicate that they understand what the conditions are. So what does the land use bylaw say? What is in the HCD? What other municipal standards? And some of them are outlined in the program draft that they would have to meet. And so they have to demonstrate that they understand the requirements in the application. So if they say they don't know later, we can call that out. So also allows us to check as well too and control that process. So some unknowns. We don't know what each grant amount is going to be at this stage. We don't know what level of affordability would necessarily be provided. We do know we have a base level of affordability for everyone who enters a program, but ultimately it'll be based on the applications that come forward and they'll be defined in the contribution agreement. The goal is really around, again, trying to achieve the deepest level of affordability for the longest period. We don't know how many applicants we're going to receive and what types. Again, we're trying to keep it intentionally open. We have a short runway to get it done. And so we don't necessarily want to unnecessarily turn someone away who might be able to provide a below market unit within the town, which is needed. The challenge is really actually with new units. So they tend to be the most expensive to produce because you're starting from scratch. So we are potentially, in terms of buying that affordability, we'll probably see more adaptive reuse, accessory dwelling units, retrofits will probably be the focus. Because with a brand new build, $25,000, even if they were eligible for the max, doesn't actually buy much. I've seen painting cost that much. So yeah, that's it for me. Any questions? Be welcome to try to address them.
Turn it over to members of council. Yes, Councillor Babineau, go ahead.
Alan, you mentioned the short runway, which it's very short. Is that, so February of 2027, that's when we have to have this program finalized and able to roll out, not when we actually have to have like given any of the funds or all of the funds potentially?
The expectation is the program will have most of the funds dispersed by that point. We do through the chair to the councillor, we do have some flexibility in that, but it is the way it was framed as a patience is wearing thin with our process. So flexibility may be reduced.
Oh, Councillor Strong.
Are other municipalities struggling with spending the money? I guess is my question.
Through the chair to the councillor, not that I'm aware of at this stage. I do know that certain programs are not having significant uptake simply because the amounts being offered are not significant enough. In speaking with the town of Antigonish briefly, not much take up. Those are particularly small grants. They don't purchase much. So, yeah.
Layering on that, I'm been concerned about this entire program since it was since we inherited it as a council because it was initiated by the previous council, and I know our staff have all adopted it as well or inherited it from that. And I know that, like, from the report reminder, there's 6 different policies or programs that are prescribed to put in place, and we have 4 in place at the moment, and there are 2 more waiting. This is one of those final 2, but we're running out of time, and the development of these policies is onerous. It's significant. It's obviously, from looking over this report and trying to fully understand it. And similarly with the others we've put in place, I don't know at this point, have we expended any of the funds that we have, because we have significant money in the bank because of having these programs and policies in place.
To the chair. So if you look on page 5 of the report under financials, so the full contributions we've received to date is $860,207.25. I have no idea why there's 25 cents. I think they'd round up at the federal government. So we have allocated $200,000 to the street services extension policy. So that is sort of ring fenced. We did do some work through, I believe it was CBCL. We're looking at our infrastructure capacity and sustainability. That was $31,418. We're suggesting that we're going to put aside $250,000 for this program for this period of time. And that remains $378,788. If we do receive the final tranche, we will have $668,523 in the bank to put towards infrastructure investment and improvement to support housing. And that was sort of the intention of the program, is to have that set aside. If we don't receive it, then it's $378,000. Again, with this program, largely we want to see the program up, running. If the funds are not dispersed within the amount of time, they go back into the general fund for the HAF and can be applied to other initiatives. So same goes with the street servicing policy as well too. So once that's terminated, then the funds go back. But if we do not spend the funds in the amount of time allocated by January 31st, 2028, we have to give it back to the federal government.
So, and as I understand it, you would be bringing this policy back to us for final approval at our next meeting. Is that the plan?
To the chair. Yes, that is the expectation. Staff were someone, hopefully we would get direction today to move forward. The grant program is very much in line with what other people are doing in this area. And we have had some initial review with finance, and they're comfortable with the approach. So yeah, ideally sooner is better than later, but yeah, July 14th.
Okay. And I guess my final comment on this is that to the point I started with, we inherited this program and this initiative, and it's been it's been very time consuming and potentially wonderful, but we have yet to been able to take full, a significant advantage of the good intentions that the program was designed with. And my concern related to that is that we have as a #1 priority the review of our LUB and MPS, and that is significantly tied to developments in our community. And the idea that we are putting programs in place with an MPS and LUB that we feel are significantly flawed and difficult to manage at this point, kind of layers on the problems. And so that's a concern I have. And I'm thinking that probably maybe you don't want to stall this particular program, because we're already quite far along in its development, and it's part of a larger project. But I really think council needs to give direction to staff at some point as to our priorities being recognized as they are, as we've given them in our motion action list. And I don't think we should need necessarily to continue just to chase the money. We need to identify our priorities and move forward with them. It's more of a comment than a question.
I guess also a comment, not a response to a question to the chair. Part of the, again, in the quarterly update with CMHC staff, we did talk very explicitly about the update of the planning documents and utilizing the HAF funds for that. CMHC has discretion over what we spend that money on. Initially, it has to go towards initiatives that are identified. And then we have some discretion about allocating after that. And they were comfortable with us reallocating some of that funds to plan review, which is needed to some extent. However, it was tied to completing the initiatives, or at least showing substantial progress to date. So not trying to chase money, just trying to make everyone happy. So it takes some effort, but thank you.
That's impossible in municipal government, isn't it? Thanks very much for the report. And oh, yes. Okay. Councillor Fullerton, go ahead.
Through the chair, yes. Just in terms of the application process, and I'm looking in your report, page 9, item 9, submission requirements. It's all laid out. That's fine. But I guess what concerns me is that, you know, if the submissions for this particular program are going to be accepted until February 2027, it's now almost July of 2026. What would the approval timeline look like for these applications? And if there is a requirement for electric utility and public works, et cetera, based on the street service extensions, what do those timelines look like? I'm just thinking in terms of applicants, what's realistic for them to expect.
Through the chair, just a clarification. Sorry, is the question whether they're at the point of application understanding the requirements or meeting the requirements?
I guess my question is the ability of the applicants to meet the requirements by the submission date.
Through the chair to the councillor. So the applications would be accepted on a rolling basis. So they would always be accepted. We would just sort of identified some sort of stop points to do the evaluation. Based on past experience, if the submission is complete, the review takes an hour, maybe 2 hours, depending on the level of accuracy of the material. If it's poor, then it'll take longer. If it's well done, it's quite quick. Again, we're trying not to make this too onerous. Again, to the point in the examples, we're not buying a lot of affordability with this amount of money based on the cost of construction and renovation. But we do want to ensure that someone is bringing a good product in. So the expectation is that staff would be working with applicants as they move the application through. Obviously, we're not, we're going to respond to questions and be helpful as much as possible. We do want to see affordable units created. So hopefully, yeah, we'd be able to move through them relatively quickly. So
thank you.
And I would just add that I think the particular meticulous manner with which this policy is being developed will be helpful in figuring out eligibility and the process. So I think that's been very helpful, and I thank staff for that. Councillor Babineau?
Oh, I don't know if Alan, you would have the answer to this. I remember when this funding was announced for the town of Lunenburg and sort of reading about it and seeing the list of the 6 different initiatives and thinking that seemed like quite a lot for the amount of money we were receiving. Do you know anything about what some of the other municipalities, like what they are required to do in order for them to receive their HJF funding? Like, is it 6? Is it 2?
Through the chair to the councillors. So most were set at 6, some chose 7 and 8. Some that have been very successful in implementation have added new initiatives because they completed them and wanted to do more. Some are still struggling to finish the ones they have. We're not the only ones who are behind. But the level of effort and delivery depends on the municipal unit. HRM hired, I think it's total 26 staff just for their HAF fund. We don't have that luxury. So, yeah.
And through you, Chair, I just want to emphasize the importance of council to really dive into this policy, read it over before the 14th. Again, the time sensitivity to it, but I think the structure and what has been developed by staff for this will help streamline the processes as outlined. And I do think there's residents and folks that are in construction now or with the potential of looking at projects that will probably come knocking at this door pretty quickly once knowing that this project or this policy is available in the grant funding. With the process of expedition with the staff will help alleviate some of these concepts of, again, do I do this project now or later? So just keep that as emphasis when you're reviewing this policy. Thank you.
Thanks. So I think that we can move on then to the next item. So before we leave this item, I guess then there's the suggestion that we make sure that any direction with regard to changes that should be brought back with this policy, I guess, would be helpful to note. It's a lot, and it was helpful to hear the presentation tonight. But in the interests of hoping to get approval, I think for the next meeting that we have, which is the 14th of July, perhaps encouraging councillors to reach out to staff with questions for clarification prior to, and seeking or, identifying problematic areas or areas of concern or question before we get to the meeting may help facilitate approval of that at this stage, unless there's anything else people want to bring up before we move on. Okay, thanks very much then. Thanks for that prod. So the next item of our agenda is our social media policy. And so for that, we have Kayla Byrne, who's going to present for us, lead us in that discussion.
Yeah, thank you. So for tonight, we have notice of the updated draft social media policy. So council has already seen a version of this at its last committee of the whole meeting in early May. And at that meeting, council directed staff to explore a policy that would have social media comments disabled as the default. So these changes have been made to the policy, and the bulk of those changes are highlighted in yellow in your agenda package. So I think there's just 2 clauses in there. The policy proposes, as requested, that public replies will generally be turned off where the platform allows. At the same time, there's a little bit of flexibility in there. So if it was determined that having comments on for something in an emergency situation or an engagement initiative, an operational need, there is that to enable them. So the policy also highlights many ways which residents can communicate with the town, including contacting staff, reaching out to council members, attending meetings, participating in surveys, et cetera, et cetera. So really highlighting the fact that social media isn't the way to provide public input. We have many other ways to go about it, including another initiative that we're working towards implementing, I believe, by end of July, early August, which is a digital engagement platform. which would be embedded to the town's website. So this would provide a dedicated and user-friendly space for public participation on matters like bylaws or planning initiatives, projects, or any other topics that council or staff feel that community input should be sought on it. And then as a part of developing this policy with the disabled comments, we conducted a bit of a jurisdictional scan that you'll see in there. So the report notes that some municipalities have already gone this route, completely disabling all comments, while other municipalities are taking a more like approval or moderation approach to their comments. In the staff report, we also outline some of the potential benefits and trade-offs associated with disabling the comments. So those are kind of there as a bullet point, but some of the potential benefits include reducing staff resources required for monitoring and moderating, reducing misinformation and inappropriate content, and creating clearer expectations that if you have a complaint or a question about your garbage, social media isn't necessarily the best place to go. You can contact staff directly to do that instead of having that answered on social media. Some of the potential trade-offs, though, which we do acknowledge, is there's less opportunity for formal community discussion. Sometimes there's really positive comments there, and that's great. We'd also have to be very clear in our posts about how you could get in touch with staff or council or who you contact in the event that we are not using social media for that. So that is pretty much the updates to those policy. We have it here for notice just tonight, just because the intent of the policy has changed quite a bit from the first version. So recommend it just for notice and then final approval in July. So if anyone has any questions or wants to go through any part of the policy, happy to do that.
Open the floor then to council's questions. So Councillor Strong.
I just want to make clear at the outset today and with the audience and those listening in at home that this is a policy that will apply to the town of Lunenburg's social media platforms, not necessarily to councillors who sit on different boards or groups throughout the region that may want to be reporting to the public on what's going on, let's say at the Lunenburg Academy. And I don't want to burden our staff with more information that is more council representation related. And I think there is some confusion in the community that staff should be doing all of our communicating when some of it is councillor. So this does not apply to councillors.
Any questions, further questions for Councillor Babineau?
So a couple of things. Thank you for this. I found the table of what some of the other municipalities were doing helpful. I also liked the bullet points about potential benefits versus trade-offs. And in reading through one of them and in light of the presentation that we received at the beginning of the meeting, the bullet point that says may be perceived as reducing accessibility or participation opportunities if alternatives are not clearly communicated. Wondering if there's been any thought around bouncing this policy past our accessibility advisory. You're nodding your head.
So it didn't go to the advisory committee, but Ellen, our regional coordinator, reviewed the policy. And within the administrative procedures, kind of near the back of it, that was all vetted through Ellen, and she made that much more comprehensive than what we had initially. So number 7 in the admin procedure, so accessible content practices, we talk about just the look and feel of posts. But again, the accessibility that we're talking about there is how do we make sure people still feel like there's someone on the other end of this? So if we say, hey, we're looking, we're introducing a new bylaw, who are you talking to? It'd be contact Kayla or contact Paul or contact, and then very clear how people can still get in touch if they have questions about that. But yeah, the accessibility from a look and feel and plain language was vetted through our regional coordinator.
Yes, Councillor Daphne.
So Kayla, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding you. We're not going to disable all the comments on all the posts. That's correct?
So the intent is that the default would be no comments at all. So on Facebook and Instagram, which are the two social media platforms we currently use, there would be no comments.
So no commenting at all. I have a problem with that. And I think it limits. I think it may limit us in some way in hearing some really good things. I know, as we all know, what has transpired the last 2 weeks, or week. I don't know, because everything's a blur right now. If you want to go on social media and post, I don't know what to say. What?
Allison has red hair.
Allison has red hair, and it makes you look foolish. That's a testament to your character. I don't look at those comments. I immediately dismiss those comments, as I do the Sparkle Glitter Pants 1975. I understand why we want to disable them. But believe it or not, I was elected to hear everybody, pro, con, and even nasty. I also know on social media that Glitter Disco Ball 11 may be sitting in the Copacabana and may not live here. So I know it gets kind of blurred, and I know I'm not making sense. But I have a problem. I really do with disabling comments. But with that said, I will follow your lead.
Councillor Strong.
I don't see the social media platform as a record of conversation or anything with the town of Lunenburg. That's just not how I view it. I think it's an information sharing. It's not really engagement. We do a lot of that. We have opportunities at council. We have opportunities to contact staff. And I'm wondering if there's going to be if there were a disabling of comments, would there be instructions in the post itself to saying who to contact with further information, or if you have an issue involved with this post?
Yeah, so that's our intent going forward. So if we think about it, and what we said at the last May 5th meeting is looking at social media more as a bulletin board to share information, and then making sure it's very clear on, again, as I said, like if it's a new bylaw, this is the right staff person to contact if you have questions, if you want to set up a meeting. And we even reiterate it just in the policy, just to make it extra clear. There are many other ways to engage. And I think a really neat thing that we're going to see later is this new social pinpoint engagement platform that Jamie Deans has been working to organize. And it's a really user-friendly, like Halifax uses it for Engage Halifax and many other municipalities. So it's just kind of moving the conversation to a more appropriate platform.
So following along on that, would any of that what was my I was trying to direct myself to Councillor Dauphine's comments, but is that of any consolation to Councillor Dauphine?
Like I said, I'll go with the flow. I just wanted my opinion out there. That's all.
You're trying to help.
I know you are, but anyways, just go with the flow.
Councillor Babineau.
Two things. The social pinpoint that was mentioned, is there going to be like a presentation on that coming forward at some point? Potentially, on like how that works, what that looks like?
Through you, Chair, yes. What we want to do is get it established in the background first, and then their social point's more than happy to do a presentation to council to show you the inner workings of how it works and how it's going to roll out. But we want to get at least the background set up first so that we are preemptively ready to roll it out. But yes, they are more than willing to do a presentation for council and the public.
And then second point, really more of a comment, to do with disabling comments. I honestly think that directing people to email the appropriate staff member is actually a quicker way for people to get heard. I've done social media for various employers over the years. And as the person who is managing that, but not necessarily the person best placed to answer the questions that are coming in, what you then have to do is actually bounce that to the person who is best placed, wait for a response, copy and paste that into the comments, then wait for a response from the commenter, when all of that could be happening between the two individuals that it should be happening between in the first place. So it's really not about trying to like silence people or anything like that. For me, it's a staff resource issue and just an issue of expediency. I don't know.
Thanks for that. Other comments from other councillors? Oh, CAO, go ahead, Paul.
Through you, Chair. Just in the context of expediency, staff do try to expedite emails and contacts. It is a great way and a better way for us. I will note that depending on the priorities of the day, there has to be expectations set even within our email context back that it may take a little bit of time. I know we live in a society now where it's instantaneous, wanting information, and through multiple staff noting even just emails they receive, and then people showing up immediately going, "Why didn't you respond to my email?" We have a lot on our plates. It is one of these things that setting expectations of we will get back to you. We will at least acknowledge an email that's come in and respond in an according time, versus if we receive a Facebook post or a comment wanting engagement, most of the time we probably won't see that. So because it's monitored by a staff member or two, and most of those comments or questions a lot of the time go unheard. So really directing the comments and the questions to the appropriate staff member will get you more engagement. It just may take a little bit more time than most people anticipate nowadays. So that's also something we have to set as a level of expectation of we will respond, we will acknowledge, but understanding it may take a little bit more time than most people anticipate based on workload and day and priority. So I just wanted to make sure that was out there as well.
Thank you. Any further? Just, I had one minor comment to make with respect to, I could speak longer on the comments one, but I think I made my views known earlier, and I'm happy with the change in the policy that's been presented. In our moderation of comments, which is part of the main policy, yes, not part of the report. It mentions, so there are opportunities, there may be opportunities when comments will be allowed when we are there, when we give direction that we're engaging in some kind of actual engagement process, and we want to we are seeking feedback, and or it's a particular issue that requires, we're looking for identification of certain areas of town where things can happen or something. There may be opportunities when we do want comments, and so there needs to be moderation of comments. There's what is the specific let's see, qualities that are or reasons why they may be required moderation. So one of them, for example, is violates applicable laws or town policies, contains hate speech, threats, harassment, discrimination, or personal attacks. Those are I would think somewhat obvious things that would need to be taken out or taken down in a thread of commentary. But I think that I actually made this pitch at our provincial conference when this was being discussed as well with regard to social media policy, because the actual presentation at the provincial conference was about the damage that is done through social media. And the presenter was giving sort of parameters like this, that, well, of course, if it's hate speech or if it's harassment or discrimination or personal attacks, those things are removed. And my argument in that forum and here as well is I think we need to set the standard even a little higher. I think those are a given that those things would be removed, but I would go on to say to further qualify that with things like if it is in any way derogatory or, and those may not be the right words, or disrespectful, that I think we need to set the bar high. I think we need to show leadership in that respect. If it's not something we would put on ourselves or endorse, then we need to set that for what appears on our official page. Can't control what people say on their own pages or elsewhere, but on ours we can, and I think we need to set a high bar. So I would ask that maybe if we're looking to give notice that that there be some further qualifications added to that list of things that are not permissible on our site. Sorry, and I'd look to have, I think we're looking at this stage for a recommendation that we give yes, special notice. Yeah, I was looking official notice of its intent to consider. Yes, and I'm wondering if council is agreeable to the amendment that I've mentioned in doing that. So if that would be added to, if willing, that should be added to the motion. So thanks. You'd like to go ahead, Councillor Babineau?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that amendment. So I guess I'll move that forward, and if other people are too, they can second it and vote on it. So I move that council provide official notice of its intent to consider the social media policy as amended, and refer the policy to a future regular council meeting for final consideration and approval.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, Councillor Strong? Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you for all the work you've done on this, Kayla. The next item on our agenda is community grants. So we have Jamie Deans coming out from the corner to join the rest of us and present this report.
Thank you. Okay, so it's 2026 Community Grants Program. Basically, recommendation that council approve the allocation of the funds for the 2026-27 Community Grants Program as presented in Attachment A. I think everyone has Attachment A, correct? Basically looking to either amend the proposed allocations by providing direction on specific changes or refer the matter to committee of the whole, whatever you want to do. So if you have any questions, I suppose I can answer them, but we had an ad hoc committee meeting, went through them, and yeah, here we are.
Thank you. We had a couple of meetings, I think. Yes, Councillor Strong?
I'm on the ad hoc committee, so a couple of meetings. One of them happened on the day of the very tragic Bridgewater fire. So that was a thought that was going into it of how important these grants are, because they actually do enhance the community and do things for the community. Last year, I made a comment that I think it was 3 out of 4 involved nourishment and feeding communities. I was really happy to see the grants this year focus on youth. So I just wanted to make that comment before we move further with it.
So the list is there. Councillors want another minute just to briefly peruse it again to see if there's any further questions. We can look to have approval of the funds as included. My only other comment that was rolling around in my head when I'm trying to speak is that it was really, I guess, going through this process and looking at this long list, it kind of just reemphasizes all of the wonderful work that is going on in our community and all of the organizations the festivals, the social justice work, everything that happens in the community is really quite phenomenal. And we can't support all of them to the degree that it would be nice to be able to, but we try to divvy up the small amount of our budget allocated to the good work that happens in the community and try to divvy it up with some sort of rationale that we take some time to talk about. So it's nice to be able to work in partnership and collaboration with so many in the community. Councillor Babineau.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who sat on the ad hoc committee for sort of doing the legwork here. Because I know it was a lot to go through. I noticed, so just for clarification, the $2,000 that's left over between the 16 and the 18, is that going to be left for like sort of last minute requests through the year, the rest of the year, I should say?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, that's the thinking. We've seen over the past, the 2 years that I've been involved with this, we have had a lot of requests to sort of come along. Towards the end of the year, there was some discussion. I think we'll probably be looking at obviously the policy overall, but there was some discussion having 2 intake periods. But I think allowing that $2,000, the first $2,000 and the second $2,000, obviously leaves us a lot more to accommodate those late requests.
And further to that, it's just the request that was on our correspondence tonight is a perfect example of it's why we didn't try too hard to expend all of the money, even though it would have been easy to in that first go.
Through the chair, I wish we had millions of dollars because every application seemed to be one that we wanted to support.
There is a recommendation if anyone is prepared or when someone is prepared. Councillor Babineau.
All right. I would move that council approve the allocations of funds for the 2026-27 Community Grants Program as presented in Attachment A.
Thank you for that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Fullerton, thank you. Ready for the vote? Any further discussion? All in favor? No one to countermand, so motion is carried. Thank you, Jamie. Next on our agenda is a request for additional financial support, particularly for StreetFest, and this kind of ties into our grant policy, but special events policy, I guess, which is sort of a sister policy to our grants policy, where we have some standing special events that go on or regularly put on that have made their way into a special kind of category. And perhaps I could get our CEO to speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So tonight before you is a request from the Lunenburg Board of Trade for additional funds. They've requested an additional $1,000 towards the StreetFest road closures for their event expected to take place on July 11th. Outlined in the background report that this event didn't take place last year, but they are anticipating to operate it this year on July 11th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. This does require a temporary closure of Lincoln Street between Callback and King Street to facilitate that for vendor setups and municipal roadways. Based on the application submitted, the cost of security, road closure, and following up is an extra $1,000 more than what is actually allocated within the special events and festival policies, which is $2,500. Within this, I did want to bring it up because of the amount of funds that are outlined in the special events policy. It's really about $9,000 versus the $8,000 that we have budgeted. So if all the events normally took place, we would actually be over budget within that budget line, something that we're going to review for budget for 27, 28 to make sure that it is reflective of what's within the budget, what's within the policy right now. But within that scope, most of these events over the last several years, some have taken place, some have not. StreetFest did not take place last year, so the funds were not out budgeted. But again, you start a new budget every year, so you don't have that flexibility. But if council wishes, you can support the request. I will give caution. Right now, it is unknown if there's vendors and if this is officially going to take place at this time of year. At this point in time, it would be advised to hear back from LBOT if they are going to advance and actually move forward with the event, or if it's going to be pushed off to another time of the year or looked at for next year. So right now, preliminary, if council wishes to support it, then you could delegate authority to myself to do that. Otherwise, the next council meeting would fall after the event if it were to run. So council, you have some options available to you at this point in time. You can table and wait for more information. You can delegate authority to the CAO for this. You can look at providing the $2,500 as outlined within the policy, regardless, because that is what's in the policy. Or you can look at another level of funding that you wish to provide. Really, the options are for you, council, right now. I would just throw caution at this point in time if the event will actually take place now, or if it's going to be pushed to a different time of the year.
Councillor Strong?
Just seeking instructions here, since I am the council rep on the LBOT. Do you want me to bring this? We have a meeting this week.
I'm thinking that there is the 2,500, which is a part of our budget that is available for this event if it goes on. And it seems prudent to me to ensure, I guess they are aware that money's, partnership fund, that amount of funding is available to them. It was just brought to us, I guess, that wouldn't cover their full cost of what we had traditionally paid for. But I think perhaps anteing up further to cover that full cost could wait till we, it could be a reimbursement if council wished to do that after the fact, rather than approving the funding at this point in time. If that's the way council wanted to handle it, that, it wouldn't, we have the opportunity with funding there to offer support. And if it does go ahead in its fullness, because it has changed over time. It used to be a very significant event for the town, and it has, as you know, didn't happen last year, and it happened in quite a small scale the year prior to that. So I think the original intent was that it would be a grand event again, but I'm not sure that they're there. So I don't think it would be inappropriate or we would be holding anything up by asking for that confirmation of the event before providing further funds. There is some support already budgeted that would be available to them. Go ahead, Councillor.
I was just going to say, so are we looking for a motion to defer then for now until we hear from them?
Madam Chair, I would recommend you have the $2,500 in the policy now. You stick with that, and if it does successful and you wish to reimburse, I think that's a report that can come back to council to say it was an event, it took place, they did expense that, and if you wish to support it in that light, we can go forward. Just getting note here that it's we normally pay the traffic company to do this, so.
the request was made up to the special events policy. So, and then I would ask further too, because this policy is, new since I've dealt with it before, or since I've been on council before. But is that an expense we pay directly then? And is this something Tyson would look after?
Through the chair, yes. Normally the way it's covered is that that we coordinate with the traffic control company, and I think historically that $2,500 had been enough to cover that. Costs have gone up, but yeah, normally, so sort of the reimbursement that's being talked about, that's not the way it would normally proceed.
That's important to know. I'm wondering if, because the cost is dictated by how many streets and how many people are required to be at barricades, and I presume. And I know when I read the request first, and I think I sent off a note as well asking, because it's a big section of town that is blocked off. It is from Callback Street all the way to King Street. So it is, basically our entire downtown blocks. And I know from previous attendance at the event, that seemed excessive for the activity that was taking place on the street. So I'm just wondering if, again, sticking to what we have in our policy, if that was understood by the board, and I'm looking at Allison, who may sit on that, if that could be the extent of what's required could be somewhat tailored to the funds available to cover the cost, and just throwing that out for consideration as well.
The meeting is tomorrow morning, so I can go with that information and be back to you with an answer, or direct Candace to come back to the town with answers to those questions or issues.
Not sure if that will. I mean, it may still be problematic if they want to go ahead, and we've traditionally covered that. I'm not sure, but I'm not comfortable not knowing is my personal stance.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think at this time, if we go based on what the policy states, that any additional costs over and above the $2,500 would be the onus of Lunenburg Board of Trade to cover that $1,000 at this point in time, because we don't have enough information to make a viable decision on this.
Is that a position that council is comfortable with? Okay, so we'll let it stand, the policy as is, and the amount in the, sorry, Councillor Babineau, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if the event doesn't happen before our next council meeting and they do decide to push it out till whenever, is that something where they can get us that information and then bring it back? Okay, yeah, then I'm definitely fine with it.
Yeah, then it would just be it would come back to us for review again. Correct? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on then. So we have another request, and this is an interesting one. I'm not sure we've dealt with the LAFF fund as a committee before, as a council before. So it's the request from the Lunenburg Curling Club.
Through, Madam Chair. So the request is from the Curling Club with an application to the Lunenburg Athletic Facility Fund for the amount of $60,662 to support repairs to the brine system at the Lunenburg Curling Club. So this fund was established because it's for nonprofit organizations that operate on town municipal lands, and it was established years ago as an opportunity for support of holding funds funds that are collected from donations so that donation receipts can be provided without them having to get full statuses because it's on municipal lands. So this is used with the tennis club as well as the curling club, as well as the pool used it as well. And if I'm not mistaken, I think those are the three groups that I was referenced today. So these funds, it's more of a hold and an in and out. So it's really their donation funds, and they're requesting access to it as we do hold the funds. And so at this point in time, it's the curling club's donation funds. They're seeking to access the 16,662. And for council, it's more of an in and out for us as a holding system as part of the LAFF agreement.
So just FYI, I didn't think until, actually earlier today that I may be the only one that's familiar with this fund. But it has been used extensively over the years, and it's really very important to those organizations because they are on municipal property. They the volunteer organizations that look after the facilities and run the programs for curling, tennis, swimming are things that recreation programs that in many other municipalities, a municipality may have to be doing on its own. So we're very fortunate to have these volunteer organizations looking after these facilities and running these programs and providing these recreation amenities and programs for our community. And so one way that we've been able to support that is with by having this fund available. And so the money is there for that purpose.
And through you, Chair, it should be noted that it's not taxpayers' funds. This is not funded that way. It's funded through donations to those organizations, and it's just a hold situation that we do with this. So it really is donated funds to those purposes.
So there's a recommendation that council approve the Lunenburg Curling's Club application for funding from the Lunenburg Athletic Facility Fund. That's where the LAFF comes from, in the amount of $16,662. And it's specifically for repairs to the brine system for the facility. Yes. Go
I'll
ahead.
move it.
Oh, councillors. And I did you the favor of reading it, didn't I? So Councillor Strong moved, Councillor Fullerton second. Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Now we're at the part of the agenda where we look for notices of motion, information requests, and councillor reports. So I think we traditionally kind of go around the room with that one. Anybody want to start? Councillor Fullerton, go ahead.
Just brief report. There have been a couple of really interesting events that I've been able to attend representing the town in the last few weeks. One of them, actually, Councillor Strawn and I attended together a SOTA roundtable, which is the South Shore Open Doors Association, in which they talked about the opening of their new shelter facility in Bridgewater. And some of us at the end of the session had a brief tour of the facility. And so, they're doing some really good work there. And we were actually supposed to have another meeting this week, but the meeting itself has been canceled. Instead, we've been invited to their open house. And if anybody's in Bridgewater on Thursday, it's well worthwhile popping in. And the shelter is on Elm Street, which is just up the hill from the Superstore in Bridgewater, and it's quite a facility that they've created there. Councillor Daphne and I attended the end of season, the annual ceremonial review for the 39 Neptune Sea Cadets, which was a great event. And these are good. They're really good kids. And I know that Councillor Daphne posted on her page and I did on mine that, we're proud to support the event and to support the cadet corps as we do with them using the facility that's in the blue building on Victoria Road. I had also had the pleasure of hosting the same group on behalf of Lunenburg Shipyard the week following their annual ceremonial review, when they got to tour the shipyard work site and see two of the Department of National Defense vessels that are undergoing restoration at the shipyard. They saw the HMCS Listerville, which is a World War II tug, and they saw the HMCS Oriole, which is the original Oriole was built the same year as the Blue Nose, and it's undergoing complete retrofit now. They've run into some delays, so it'll be here longer than they expected. But the cadets were over the moon. They just thought it was the greatest thing, and so that was that event. I went to an accessibility in the workplace seminar that was in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia Works Employment Solutions. They're sort of tied, those two organizations. And they offered that seminar free of charge to employers and not-for-profit groups. And it was a 3-hour event on a Thursday afternoon, also the day of the fire in Bridgewater, which was, a sad thing. But in any event, it was a very informative session. And last but not least, the Zodiac tour was the highlight of the past couple of weeks. It was a day well spent to see some of the outlying areas of our municipality, and had a little tour of a number of islands and picked up a bunch of garbage. It was exciting.
Who knew garbage collection could be fun? Councillor Greek.
I was able to represent the town a few weeks ago at the 150th anniversary celebration of the Bridgewater Fire Department. It was certainly great to be able to attend the celebration and to honor the dedication and service of the volunteers and their families, certainly in light of recent events. And it was definitely an opportunity to see them in action, as during the open house they received a service call and a number of the members had to take off to that call. So really a reminder that for those who volunteer, that you're never truly off duty. And this coming Friday, I'll be representing the town and Region 6 at the Solid Waste Management Regional Chairs Committee meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Babineau.
I participated in the muffin run. Always a good time.
Yes, you did.
Didn't quite land where I wanted to with my time, but that's all right. There's always next year. And also the same day was the town's birthday celebration up at the Academy, which was wonderful. And the deputy mayor gave opening remarks. So that was great.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to see you a lot that day. Councillor Daphne? No? Councillor Strong?
I'm just doing my notes up now because it's been a really busy couple of weeks, but I won't take up a lot of time. Board member work, Harborview Haven meetings are going full tilt at this point, with our annual general meeting coming up on Friday. South Shore Regional Library is having a really fun event at the Fisheries Museum. Rachel Reed will be speaking, and tickets went on sale on Saturday morning. The lineup was from the front door of the Academy entrance to the library, all the way down Callback Street. It was really an exciting 9 o'clock sunny day to see people turn out to raise funds for the library and to be wanting to participate in such an incredible author's work. Zodiac tour, yep, can't say that enough. Little Duck Island, I've been there before, but not like this one. And also on the South Shore Regional Library, the Service Awards are on Thursday, which is always a very fun event and which gets us there in person. Most of our meetings are remote, so I get to mingle with the real board on Thursday. Of course, LBOT, I've been going along on stuff like that, and a big congratulations to the Lunenburg Heritage Society, which in the interim between the last meeting and today held its kickoff for their fundraiser to complete the exterior of the building, complete with a message from the architects who are involved in it, on the things that they're finding in the building. I'd encourage everybody to stay engaged with that process because we are actually learning about the history of Lunenburg through this project. I was expecting Debbie Dauphiné to beat me to that one, but just throwing that, she's on the board, just throwing it out there. And that's where I got cut off in making my notes. So there you go.
Thank you. As usual, councillors and council has been very busy. And yeah, thanks to staff for the goodies that were provided at the Lunenburg's birthday. They were wonderful. And it was nice to see both Councillor Babineau and Councillor Daphne there. And the muffin run that was mentioned too is lots of fun. Just because I was expecting someone else to mention it, but don't forget Canada Day is going to be just a little over a week away. So we will be on the waterfront celebrating with the rest of our community, and it promises to be a lovely event as it has been in the past. So look forward to seeing members of the community there. Don't think there are any items for committee of the whole, which has been pushed back anyway with our summer schedule. We're not anticipating meeting in that form until the fall or until late summer, at least in September. The motion action list is at the end of our agenda, as it always has been. Are there any questions or comments about that from members of council? I had aside from mentioning it earlier in my comments, I did also have one question about one of and I know some of us are getting some correspondence about another item that we may want to address sometime in the future about where we are with the Cornwallis Street project, but we can speak further with staff before bringing that one up at public session. I did want to ask with respect to the Laurie Fisher art project, if it just said staff TBD, and I know that's not a high priority item, but it is on our list. So I wondered if I know now actually wouldn't be the time to do anything about it, but wondered if we could at least identify a staff person or see where or make contact with Mr. Croft, who had brought the idea to our attention. So just point that out, that because it's on the list, it's priority C, of course, but didn't want it to die on the vine, I guess. So just in reviewing it, that's what came to my mind. Councillor Strong?
Just one point, just one comment, and that is that since we came in and established this motion action list, we've been speeding through it. And I just wanted to thank staff and council for all of their attention to the things that we signed up for from the beginning to deal with. And I don't have any doubts that we'll move through the rest of it in my mind with the right, going about it the right way in consultation with staff.
Thanks for those comments and very true. And I think almost we need to almost add some of those. There's so much that goes on that isn't recognized with this kind of checklist that we keep for ourselves. And so, and I know we do sometimes try to celebrate those things through our social media, but there may be a way that we can more formally identify where progress is being made, because it has been significant and so should be recognized as that. So thanks for bringing that up. There isn't anything else we do. The last item on our agenda is the opportunity or the need to go into closed session to discuss a personnel matter. So there's a recommendation if council's prepared to make that motion. Councillor Babineau?
I recommend that council moved into closed session to discuss agenda item 14.1 personnel matter.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Fullerton. All in favor? No one contrary minded. Motion is carried. And we will take a brief adjournment so we can shuffle into closed session. Thank you.